Hey everybody, it's your host MJ with the Here to Talk podcast, and today I'm bringing on Ari Sarap. Am I saying that right?
That's right.
Okay, thank God. Sorry, I bring it up with multiple guests. I am dog shit when it comes to last names and stuff. I'm very horrible at names.
It's okay. If you ever get like lost with my last name, just think of Saran wrap. Saran wrap. It's similar.
That oddly helps a lot. Thank you. Anyway, yeah. So I mean, just that little tidbit you gave me right now, that was more than fascinating. I'm not gonna lie to you. Not because I don't branch out and talk to different people and stuff. It's just the fact that there's not really that big of a Jewish community in Texas. That's the state I'm originally from.
Mhm.
You might be the first Jewish person I've ever talked to.
Well,
Yeah,
honored.
yeah, yeah. Sorry, I know that sounds weird. It just, yeah. As far as
Oh no, it
community
doesn't
basis,
sound weird at all. I once spoke with in college. I met this woman who was
yeah,
from Cameroon, and when I told her I was Jewish, her jaw dropped. Like she didn't know that Jews existed. So you're in good light. At
really,
least you know you. At least you knew Jews existed in the world.
yeah. Okay, I need to process that for a minute. Really, she thought all the Jewish people were gone.
Her jaw
Okay,
dropped.
uh,
She had no.
makes me
She was
question.
like she was in disbelief, like I was a mythical
Yeah.
creature or something.
Okay. Again, that's a lot to digest, but anyway, we'll move on from that. Yeah, but as far as growing up, there wasn't that big. I'm pretty sure there is a small Jewish community in Texas, but from where I grew up, there really wasn't. From what I understand, isn't like the majority of a Jewish population here in the States, like in places like New York, mostly, right?
So the big hubs are in New York, Los Angeles, Chicago. You actually have a pretty decent community in Dallas and in Houston.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not as big
That
as New
might,
York though. Not as big as New
yeah,
York or LA, but
yeah.
you have a good I have friends actually who are part of the Houston community. There's a pretty good sized community in Houston and in Dallas.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. So it sounds like bigger cities. I mean, I'm from Fort Worth, so it's a pretty big city, but Dallas is a whole nother story.
Right.
Also, I tend to stay away from Dallas. I did not like going to Dallas when I lived back in Texas. Not my favorite place in the world.
Yeah, I don't
But
do so well in big cities either.
nah, I mean that I think that's one of the reasons that led me to live here in Omaha. I needed to get away from the overcrowding, the you know how it goes, moving people out of their home, building condos and stuff. I had to get away from that. I couldn't take it anymore.
I live in a
Uh,
small, like little mountain city of like 20,000 people in the northern mountains of
really?
Israel. So yeah, that's
Is
what
it
led me
beautiful
there
there?
too. It's, dude, I'll have to send you pictures. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah, when the show's over, send me a picture of what it's like there.
Absolutely.
You immediately yeah, you immediately caught my attention because for everybody that I bring onto this show, I love talking to people from outside my country because I feel like there's a lot more to learn. Like, I was a little disappointed. I was supposed to talk to this lady from the UK, but she never answered. So I don't know what happened with that. I felt like that was a missed opportunity. But when you told me you were from Israel, and immediately I was like, oh, holy crap, I gotta talk to this guy. I'm pretty sure he has a lot to tell me, especially about where he's living at and stuff, because I'm real fascinated in other people's countries and cultures and all that stuff. Israel, I've heard a lot of things about Israel, and I'm gonna go and point this out. I don't mean the Israel Palestine conflict. I'm not big into politics, so you don't have to worry about that for me. I'm strictly just I want to know about the culture type of lifestyle. That's what I want to get from this.
Okay.
But as far as that, when you first moved to Israel, what was the transition like? Especially coming from, populated places like the United States to going over there. What was that change like?
It was wild. So when I first got to Israel, my first stop was in Yerushalayim, Jerusalem.
Oh,
And
really?
I was in the old city of Jerusalem for almost 2 years. Uh, we're talking about I lived like minutes walking distance from the Kotel, from the Western Wall, which is one of the holiest sites to the Jewish people. That's basically it's the Beit Hamikdash, right? The
Yeah.
Beit Hamikdash, which is the holy of holies for the Jewish people, it was destroyed um, when the Romans took over, right? We actually coming up in a month is a holiday called Tisha B'av, where we mourn the temple, right? The only part of that temple that's still standing is the wall,
Hmm.
and it's brought down, and that's where the God's divine presence rests in this location. So I used to live like minutes walking distance from there, and I didn't grow up religious, right? So, and I
Yeah.
never really saw so many kippas growing up or like religious people in general because I grew up in Las Vegas, um,
Yeah.
which
Kind of the
was a
opposite of
strong,
religious.
complete opposite. Um, so it was a man, it was such an adjustment. There was actually days that I would just break down in tears. I was so overwhelmed. I didn't know what to do with myself. It's such the old city, especially when you're in yeshiva. Yeshiva is basically rabbinical school, but the type of yeshiva that I was in was for guys who were Jewish but not religious, and they were like searching and asking questions and learning what it means to be a Jew. So I was in that type of place, right? And it was always jam packed. There was always something going on. I could never get a moment to myself. So that was a huge adjustment for me. I was always used to like if I needed time for myself, I can go get time, right? That was so new to me, you know. Another cultural thing is in Israel, there's a lot of shoving, a
A lot
lot
of
of
shoving.
pushing, a lot of shoving, a lot of pushing, and it's not a disrespect thing. They don't even really realize that they're doing it. In America, if you like kind of shoulder budge someone, right, it's like completely disrespectful, you know.
Yeah.
But out here, it's like I'm just walking and I shoulder bumped you. It doesn't mean anything. That took a
It's a
that
cult.
was a
Sorry.
big one.
It's
That was a big one.
yeah. So it's like a cultural norm where it's not so much you're being rude or anything. You just got to get where you got to get to, right?
It's like I happen to like shoulder bump you, but I'm not even like aware of it.
Hmm.
Another
Okay.
thing is like you could be sitting somewhere and maybe there's something interesting behind you. People will
Yeah.
literally just be standing over you or like disregard for your public space. Complete
Yeah. Okay.
disregard for your public space. So that's another big one.
Okay. And that's just due because everybody's used to like the overcrowding or something. Like just
I This is just my opinion. All right, take it for what you may. I think Israel has this mentality of mishpacha. Mishpacha is the Hebrew word for family. I think people just feel so close to each other
yeah.
that there is that lack of boundary, that we feel like there's no boundary because we look at each
Hmm.
other as we're like we're one big family. Because being a Jew is not just a religion. It means that you come from the Jewish people. You come from Yehuda, right? Yehuda was one of the 12 sons of Yaakov, Jacob,
Yeah.
right? So it's
Okay. Yeah.
not it's not just a religion, but it's a people. And we're all part of that. Majority of the country is Jewish. So there's that strong like connection. That's my opinion. That's what I think. I think that's why there's
Ah.
that closeness, even when you don't want it to be so close. I think that's why people feel like they're so close. Like I could be walking with my kid, and it could be sunny out, and I could think, as my daughter's father, that she doesn't need a hat, but some older lady could be walking down the street and be like, "Hey, your kid needs a hat." Like that's the type of mentality it is out here.
Hmm.
you know
Yeah. And that's real fascinating because Okay, so I was born Catholic. I was raised Catholic, and I didn't convert to Christianity, which honestly, if you ask my opinion, kind of hand in hand with each other. Uh, I was I converted to Christianity somewhere in like the middle of my college years. So growing up, of course, we have the Bible and everything. We That stuff is hammered into us like sacredly, obviously. So we hear all these stories of like the names you're dropping, like you pronounce it Jacob, right?
Yeah,
Yeah. So where us is like, Jacob, all
Jacob.
that stuff. Yeah, like it's weird because the way you're describing it, it has a sense of familiarity with me because the stories, I know they tend to cross cultures and everything. I do know about the story and the history of Jerusalem because I know this is coming from my outside perspective on how it was presented to me, but I know the way I was described it from our point of view was it the most sacred city, and I know three main religions are kind of fighting over it in a sense, right?
Jer- Jerusalem, but literally the entire country, right? Is
Yeah.
everyone's. I've lost track of how many times Israel has been conquered, and that's why you have Jews who've been dispersed throughout the entire world. You have Jews from
Mhm.
China who are finally coming, coming back
Yeah.
to Israel. You know, Jews from
Yeah.
Africa, Jews from Europe, Jews from all over the world. You know, Jews from India, and it's because we've been dispersed. You know, how many times
Yeah.
is Israel been conquered? I can't tell you. I don't remember off the top of my head. But from the when the Brits were in control, and the Muslims, and then the Ottomans, and just so many times. But the Jews, we've always been here, and it wasn't only until a little over 70 years ago that we we claimed our land. you
Yeah.
know so it's a big thing. It's a big thing for Israel to once again, right, be recognized as the home of the Jewish people, because it always has been. It's just we just been kicked out so many times, you know
Yeah.
dispersed all over the world, and now we're back home. It's a real big thing, and that's why you see a lot of Jews from all over the world, like myself, who are like, it's time to come back home. This is where we belong.
Yeah. And my apologies if I'm coming off as ignorant or disrespectful. This is literally like the tiniest bit of knowledge I have on the subject because
Yeah.
I'm only taught from what we learn from school and the Bible and stuff, but even then, it never goes into like the history of it. It's more just the spirituality aspect that we're taught. We're never taught the history of the country, the entire city as a whole. We're just taught the spiritual basics, what Jerusalem and all that means to the Christians and the Bible and stuff. But as far as all the other knowledge, you know how it goes. The schools will teach you one thing, but if you want to know the entire story, you got to go out and figure it out yourself.
Right.
That's my
Everyone has an
aspect.
agenda.
Yeah. And me, I am religious to a certain aspect, but I don't follow the agendas. I like to hear the stories. I like to learn the cultures, the religions, because like this is how it goes. My best friend is Hindu, and back in high school, I would ask him questions on a daily basis because I was just always so interested in what he had to teach me. And then vice versa, he would ask me about Christianity, and I would tell him. And the thing was, we never got offended or anything, or we never tried to prove each other right or wrong. Whose religion was this? It's like I took an interest in his culture, he took an interest in mine, and in the long run, I felt like we both learned something. Like for people who fight over this type of stuff, I never really understood that. Like, I mean, you have your beliefs, you have everything. That's perfect. But I
Yeah.
never thought you should hate somebody based on their stuff. And I guess that's why I was always careful when it came to learning about Jerusalem and all that, because I knew there were some conflicts even regarding that city. But I was just more interested in, I like to call it the melting pot of the cultures that are there because I enjoy learning about anything that's different from myself. And honestly, anything you want to teach me about Judaism or any of that, I'm very interested because again, I wasn't really introduced to a giant population of Jews or anything. And to me, all this is fascinating because I feel there's so much to learn from you. I know we got a short amount of time, but I'm hoping one other day we can sit down and talk more because I have nothing but interest in everything. Uh,
Absolutely.
that and this is just me. I'm very interested in the type of food y'all make because I've seen some of this stuff and it just looks delicious.
Yeah, Israeli food, Mediterranean food in general is just unbelievable.
Yeah, yeah, that's me. I bottom line, I just love being a big culture guy, and especially what you came on to talk to me about the ADHD and fathers or men.
Yeah.
Yeah, another big topic I'm really interested in because I'm a big mental health advocate. I started taking mental health more seriously back in like 2021 after we experienced some major losses in my family. Uh, it took me a long time for my wife to break me down and say, "Hey, go to therapy. You need help. You need to talk to somebody." And then when I finally gave in and I went, that opened this entire journey for me to learn more and more about mental health. And I was like, dear God, this stuff goes way deeper than I understood. And when you came on and told me about the ADHD, I was like, you know what? Yeah, let's bring that on. I'm not just interested in the culture, bringing the mental aspect of that stuff because again, it's not something I'm familiar with, but I want to learn more. I'm literally all about gaining as much knowledge as possible through everybody I talk to. And I'm hoping you can teach me a lot because ADHD is something that's still new to me. The only, again, small knowledge I have, the only aspect I really understand is what's brought up in children, but I didn't know how it really affected grown men and women. I was hoping you could shed some light on that for me.
The symptoms of ADHD differ when you're a child to when you're a teenager to when you become a man, right? So, for instance, when I was a kid, I would have crazy tantrums, right?
Yeah.
To the point that psychiatrists actually diagnosed me with bipolar when I was 9. I found out in my 20s that I don't have bipolar. The anger, the tantrums actually come from not knowing how to regulate your emotions, not knowing how to express yourself, which is one of the 11 executive functions of the brain that when you have ADHD that you struggle with. So
Yeah.
not knowing how to regulate your emotions is one of the 11 executive functions that we struggle with. So, and one of the things that I find so interesting about ADHD is you can have 10 guys, right, in a room that all have ADHD, and we're going to be a little bit different from one another. Yeah, we may, a good chunk of us all, right, we might all be forgetful, right?
Yeah.
But we may have different strengths and weaknesses. Just because we all have ADHD doesn't mean that we all struggle with the same thing. Like I work with a guy, actually a few, right, who have trouble going to bed on time, right?
Yeah. I get that.
That can
Yeah.
sometimes be a symptom of ADHD, right? So just because you have trouble going to sleep doesn't mean that you have ADHD, right? But you
Yeah.
can get a lot of men with ADHD, when we are hyper focused on something, when we're like zoned in, it's so hard for us to disconnect from that thing because we found a flow, we found a rhythm, and we're like in it, right? And once we're in it, it's so hard to be like, okay, let me close the phone or let me stop what I'm doing and let me go to bed. It's not so simple for us. And a lot of men struggle with this. But with that being said, a lot of men who have ADHD also don't struggle with that. They struggle with other things, you know?
Yeah.
Um, but it really depends. So it's not like just a clear, cut answer, right? Um, everyone, men, women, and children across the board are going to experience ADHD in a different light.
So it's
But
kind of like, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to finish off with saying that at the end of the day, though, it's the way that your brain processes information, right?
Yeah.
And that comes down with when someone hurts your feelings, with how you focus, when you get mad, when you get sad, when you feel rejected, to when it comes to time management, to when it comes to organization. It is so broad, MJ, that it's like it can't just be put into a box. But it's the if anyone who's watching this is able to get something, it's understanding it's like you process things differently. And because you process information differently, that it hits you differently, right?
Mm,
So when you get mad, it hits you harder, right? When you think you have to be at a job at your job at 10:30, you don't know how to process time like someone who's not neurodivergent. So you're either going to be late or really early, right? You're never going to be like on time. So to answer your question, it really comes down to, like I said, how you perceive information, how your brain takes it, processes it, and then how you end up acting with that information. If that
mm.
makes sense.
Yeah. It all this sounds familiar because so the one thing I struggle with the most is I have super severe anxiety. Um, the
A lot
background
of men
behind
with
it,
ADHD have anxiety, by the way.
like I brought up because I wanted to come in knowing just a little bit of knowledge. I was looking up some of the symptoms of ADHD in men and stuff. Anxiety and insomnia seems to be one of the main factors that pops up a lot. Uh, but I struggle with severe anxiety to the point where I was very prone to panic attacks. Like I was so bad. I was having panic attacks like every other week. And I started to notice looking more into it that people who struggle with different, I don't even know whether or not to call them like mental disorders or whatever, but people who struggle with things like these, uh, some of them will be different than others. Like how some people who struggle with anxiety tend to overeat or something because they can't handle the stress, where I'm the opposite, that when my anxiety gets so bad, I lose my appetite to the point where sometimes there's like a day or two that I forgot to eat anything. And
Oh.
that all sounds very familiar. And also the fact that I think you're the third person I heard from that was, can I go ahead and call it wrongfully diagnosed with bipolar?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
misdiagnosed, wrongly diagnosed.
Yeah. I think you're the third person that I've heard because I listen to other podcasts too that one of the hosts was diagnosed with bipolarism when he was young. And it wasn't until this day that, grown man and everything, that they had to reinvestigate what was up with him. And then they found out, oh, he doesn't have bipolarism. He's actually ADHD. And I was over here like, dang, how often does this happen? Like, is this a common occurrence right now?
Also, for it to happen and to be put on medication for something you don't even have. I
That
was
was
on
what he,
bipolar medication from 9 to 18, some heavy duty stuff, and I don't even have bipolar.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
wild to think about that. You know,
yeah. He brought that up. He was like, "There's a reason my brain was so messed up was because they had me on medicine for something I didn't have." And I was like, "Jesus Christ, how horrible it must be to deal with that, given medication for something that's not even wrong with you."
you feel like a zombie, when you're relying on medication. That's why when I work with people, I have a holistic approach to how I do things. I don't feel like anyone should feel like I can't live my life unless I take my meds. What kind of life is that? We don't want to
Yeah,
feel like that, you know? And the truth is, yeah, you know what? It may be a little bit harder. Yeah, you're gonna have to invest some time and learn some skills, but you can do it. you know like it's not this little pill that is your savior. No, like you are capable of doing hard things. Like, can we just acknowledge that for a moment? Like, you can do hard things, and
yeah,
if anything is worth investing in, it's you. Wouldn't you say? Like, that's the biggest investment that a person can make. It's not investing in a house. It's not investing in that car you've always wanted. It's not even investing to get an education. It's investing in you. And that may translate in getting education and getting a home and getting that car because you're investing in yourself. But whatever you do to invest in you is the best investment. So if you have ADHD, isn't it worth your time to learn how to live with this thing that's not going to go away because it's
Yeah.
part of you? It's how you operate. Wouldn't it be nice to know how to live with it confidently and in a healthy manner? And you won't have to feel like you have to take a pill in order to get anything done, in order to feel like you're part of society. So that's how I felt. I was like, I don't want to be a slave to these meds. I need to know how to be a human being without relying on some chemically made capsule that's supposed to fix all my problems. And it's not a good feeling. Growing up, if my parents, even if I was instigated, right? If I was upset, you know what my parents would do?
What's
They
that?
would just give me the pill. And the pill would just make me they were not giving my ADHD medicine, they were giving my bipolar medicine because they thought I was having a bipolar episode. And what these meds would do is would knock me out completely. Done. If I accidentally took these meds in the morning, I couldn't go to school. Complete, just like
Out of
I have
it.
no movement in my body. I can't do anything. Right.
Yeah.
um that's not a good feeling. And I didn't want to live like that. So I really invested in myself to learn how to live in this world without medication. And now I'm extremely blessed that I'm able to help like minded men learn how to do the same thing.
And I honestly, I respect you for that because I do understand what that's like. Um, I because I needed a bit of a quick fix before it took me a long time to get my therapy set up because, insurance, all that dumb shit. I needed a quick fix just to keep me on track until I could get into therapy. So I went to my doctor. He prescribed me the easy name is just Zoloft. It's like one of the weaker functions of anti-anxiety meds. He gave me that. It was helping to an extent, but it wasn't until I got to therapy that I realized which one helped more. And it was the therapy that was doing so much more for me rather than the pill. And for the longest time, like it was helping me stay calm, but for the longest time, I did feel numb. And down the line, eventually I would get into a spot where I was better and I was like, I need to get off this medicine because I know it's doing something to me. And I shouldn't have been complaining. I wasn't on even the worst of it. But when I finally was able to get off the medicine and notice the difference in feeling between how I felt with the medicine and how I felt without it, I could see night and day. And I was over here just saying, I don't want to do that anymore. I am okay with not taking the medicine as long as I have therapy to go to. And luckily, one thing I'm starting to notice what's so hard for people, men especially, to go into therapy, not just for the whole stoic or men got to be tough thing, it's finances. Like if you don't have insurance or anything, I've looked into the cost, especially with that BetterHelp app. I'm probably ruining any chance I have of advertisement later, but whatever. I looked at the prices and the cheapest one was $65 a session. This day and age, people can barely afford eggs, let alone $65 for a therapy session. And it's sad because mental health is becoming such a bigger thing this day and age, but it's so hard to get that help.
Yeah, it's not easy. you know it's
Yeah,
not easy. That's actually why I have my group coaching that I offer, right? Because
yeah,
it's more affordable. I meet with a bunch of guys once a week, and it's a brotherhood. Guys are helping each other too. you know and there needs to be options like this. you know there needs to be options like this because, like you said, a lot of people can't afford $65 for one session. you know
yeah.
um And I personally charge more than $65 for one session, but that's why there needs to be more options, right? Because what about the guy who can't afford, 65 plus for a session, who wants to work on himself, who wants to grow? There has to be options. But I'll tell you this, even with all the options, a person can give themselves a million excuses not to work on themselves because it's scary.
It
Working on
is.
yourself is blood, sweat, and tears. It is not for the faint-hearted. It is not for the weak-minded. You know, though, a message to everyone, including yourself, MJ, who is working on themselves. You're a warrior. Like this stuff is not easy, right? It's not easy, and but it's necessary, right? Because we're trying to break generational traumas. We're trying to do better than how we were raised. We're trying to to break the norm that we grew up with, you know, so our kids can have a better experience than us, and their kids. It starts with us though. We're the generation that needs to start the breaking. We need to break all of it, and it's not easy, and a lot of people don't do it because it's not easy, but those who do put in the work, they see that there's no other choice. It has to happen.
I heard a quote. I think it said, growing up, you realize the monsters were never under your bed, they were in your head.
Hmm.
And that resonated with me because, especially going to therapy and dealing with everything you got to deal with, it sucks because you got to face your demons. You have to look at yourself really hard in the mirror. You got to not point out the flaws and like, this is what's wrong with me, this is why I'm bad. No, you got to point out everything on maybe this is what caused me to be a little fucked up, and this is why I need to work on it because that's the one thing I learned from therapy. Trauma is not what we think it is. Trauma is not just, like people who go through PTSD or sexual abuse who see horrible things. Sometimes trauma is just the experiences you grew up with that affected you in a way you never really thought of. Um, and the main reason I wanted to bring you on, especially for this month, because I don't know how things go outside my little bubble here in America, but it is Men's Mental Health Awareness Month, and I take that very seriously because being a man, a dad, trying to get your head together is painstakingly stressful. And then try to go throughout normal day like everything's okay when deep down inside you do not feel okay. I understand that on the daily basis, and that's why I wanted to bring you on because besides to talk with ADHD and everything, it seems like you have a good aspect on what it's like for men to deal with mental struggles and to own up to it and be okay to own up to it because it's hard. Like I have friends who are stronger and tougher than me, both mentally and physically, and even them, they're having a hard time opening up about anything or opening up the idea that they need to go to therapy. It's I'd say it's a huge struggle, especially for men to just be vulnerable in that moment and say, "Hey, I need help. Like, I need help real bad, and I don't know who to turn to." Because when somebody needs help, they usually look towards men or paternal type figures because that's who we are raised to show that they are the strongest. But who do you turn to when you feel like you're supposed to be that? You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's brought down that in the teachings of the Torah, right? That when God created the world, He didn't intend for you to go through struggles on your own, right?
Yeah.
It, we're not supposed to go through struggles on our own, but there's this misconception, this like because I'm a man, like you said, I'm supposed to be this like what, like this Hercules type of guy, like I'm supposed to be able to pick up boulders, metaphorically speaking,
Yeah.
and just carry the world on my shoulders. I'm supposed to be everyone's punching bag. I'm supposed to, you know, just put up with the 9 to 5, and we do this. We do all of this, you know. But when we don't take care of ourselves, that's when we start to see issues affecting our life and the ones that we love the
Yeah.
most. We can't forget about us, right? You know,
Yeah.
yeah, you got to be there for your wife, and you got to be there for your kids and for your community. And it's easy when you're doing that to forget about yourself. And I would say to every man watching this, man, especially in, this month that we're in right now, is like, make sure that you find time for yourself. If you can't do it every day, at least once or twice a week, like, find time for you. It's so important because you're not going to be able to give yourself over completely to those you love. You're not going to be able to do the job that you need to do if you don't give yourself some TLC. You know, you need
Yeah.
that. You need that.
Yeah. And if there's any men out there listening that are like me, it's okay to enjoy the things that make you happy. Like I
Absolutely.
struggle with this. I struggle with this a lot. If you want to sit down, play a video game for an hour or two, play that video game. You want to read a book, you want to go to the gym, you want to, I don't know, woodworking, whatever your hobby is that you feel brings you happiness, but you feel you haven't worked hard enough to deserve it. Okay, that's how I struggle with it. That's why it's so hard for me to do something that's not work or podcasting or physical workout. If you feel like you haven't done enough to earn that free time, take that free time anyway, because then you'll notice you let your brain cool down for a bit, and then you notice, hey, you know what? I have been working hard. I do deserve this little bit of free time. It's okay to take an hour or two out for myself, even if necessary, and talk to whoever you're with. Take a day for yourself. There's no shame in taking a break. It's okay to do that. And I'm preaching to the choir because I still suck at it, but I'm trying. It's okay to take a little moment for yourself. Everybody, men, women, you know, older people, younger people, take a moment for yourself. Catch your breath. That's okay. It's okay to be selfish a little bit and think about you. No shame in it.
One of my mentors, he's a father of 6. And he's not the only one who does what I'm about to tell you. I know quite a few men who are phenomenal husbands and fathers who do this, right? Who have 6, 8, 10 kids, right?
Dang.
Sometimes they go on little trips by themselves, right? To just reset. 3 days, 4 days to reset, you know? And their wives see that they need to do that because we have to understand something. Men and women are wired differently. It comes more natural for a woman to be a mother than it is for a man to be a father. It's more natural for them to just fall into that role, and they also adapt to it quicker because they had this baby inside of them for 9 months, you know,
Yeah.
like when the baby's born, they've already been living with it for 9 months, and then it comes out, and we're like, "Oh, what is this?" But the, but the woman, she's like, "Oh, I know what that is. That's what's been inside me for 9 months," But the only experience that you've been seeing is like if the baby's kicking, or your wife's attitude, like things change, right? But we it's a different relationship, and also understanding how we just operate in the world. We're different. And I think it's very, very important that, and you don't see so much of it. You see women retreats all over the place. There's a lot of options for women out there. There's not
Yeah.
so many options for men, and there should be more, right? Because we need it. And a lot of men feel, from what I see, a lot of men put up this shield, right, to protect themselves, you know, which is a defense mechanism. When you've been hurt so many times, you're afraid to let people in, for good reasons. It's our body's trying to protect us from getting hurt,
Yeah.
you know? So it's a process, it's a process. But exactly like what you said, like treat yourself, when you give yourself some free time, it's an act of love, you know?
Yeah.
We do it for other people all the time, right? You take your kid to the playground or you do something nice for your wife. And these things come naturally to us because we want to give, right, to the people we love. But why is
Yeah.
it harder when we want to give to ourselves?
Yeah. I that's deep, man. And honestly, I think that's the perfect way to end this episode. Thank you, Ari, for being here. I don't want to keep you long because I know you got something else to take care of, but thank you. I believe that was the message, not only myself, because I still need to hear stuff like that, but when I post this stuff, that's going to be the message that anybody needs to hear right now because times are tough, but besides having each other, we need to have ourselves too. And I think it's okay to teach people that. But I want to thank you for coming on the show. I love everything you have to tell me. I want to bring you back because there's so much more questions and stuff I have
We
to
have to
ask.
do a
But
round two for sure.
yeah. But for the meantime, do you have any plugs or any Instagram models, anything you want to drop down?
Yeah, you can find me on Facebook, Ari Sarab. I'm the only dude with the name Ari Sarab with a big beard. You can't miss me. And on Instagram, it's Next Level Living Coaching. That's the same tag for TikTok as well. And
Okay.
on YouTube, if you type in Ari Sarab, I should come up as well. Um, what else? Yeah, that's how you find me.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the show, Ari. I hope to see you again. And any last parting words before we sign off?
I always like to tell people if you can believe that you can be broken, believe you can be fixed. All right. Times are tough. Life can get really hard, but don't give up on yourself. All right. You're going through some hard times. You may feel broken, but you're not broken. You're far from broken, and you can make it through this.
All right, everybody. Well, that'll be our episode of Here to Talk for this week. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you soon.